I was so sad when your parents declined Harvard on your behalf, my former high school counselor Mrs. Patterson said, sipping wine at my 15-year reunion, her words casual and devastating in equal measure. You had such potential, Vivian. The admissions committee specifically noted your essay about immigrant resilience. I always wondered what you would have become with that opportunity. I stood frozen, my champagne glass suspended midair, because I had never declined Harvard. I'd never even known I'd been accepted. But why had I spent 15 years believing I wasn't smart enough for the Ivy League, and why did my parents' voices suddenly echo in my memory with a cruelty I'd somehow normalized? You didn't get in anywhere good. Community college is fine for girls. Your brother needs to focus on his applications. He's the one with real potential. Stop crying about it. Not everyone is meant for prestigious schools. They told me I'd been rejected everywhere except community college. They told me my applications weren't strong enough. They told me, repeatedly, that I simply wasn't smart enough for the schools I'd dreamed about. They'd lied. For 15 years. The conversation with Mrs. Patterson lasted 2 hours. She'd kept records. She was that kind of counselor, meticulous and caring. She remembered my application because it had been exceptional. Perfect SAT scores. Valedictorian candidacy. Essays that had made her cry. Harvard wasn't the only acceptance, Vivian. You got into Yale and Princeton too. Your parents declined all 3 within the same week. They told me I was rejected. They told me you decided Ivy League wasn't right for you. That you wanted to stay close to home. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. They lied to both of us. Why would they do that? I asked your father that question, actually. He said something about girls not needing expensive educations when they'd just end up raising families. I thought it was old-fashioned, but I assumed you'd agreed. I hadn't agreed. I hadn't known. I'd spent 15 years believing I was inadequate while my parents sabotaged my future to fund their preferred narrative, that sons mattered and daughters didn't. The drive home from the reunion was a blur. I called my husband, Daniel, from the car. They lied to me. For 15 years. I got into Harvard, and they told me I was rejected. Silence on the line. I built everything I had believing I wasn't good enough for the Ivy League. Every success, every achievement, every moment of pride, it was all shadowed by the belief that I'd failed at 18. Vivian. They stole my confidence. They stole my opportunity. They stole 15 years of believing in myself. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find that acceptance letter. It has to exist somewhere. The investigation took 3 weeks. I hired a private investigator who specialized in document recovery. She tracked down copies of the original acceptances through university archives. Harvard, Yale, and Princeton all maintained records of admitted students, including those who declined. The letters were dated March of my senior year. Dear Ms. Chen, we are pleased to inform you of your acceptance to Harvard College. I'd been admitted to the class of 2012. Full financial aid package. Personalized note from the admissions committee praising my extraordinary intellectual curiosity and resilient spirit. The decline letters, sent 2 weeks later, bore my father's signature. Not mine. My father's. He'd forged my name on official correspondence to 3 Ivy League universities. He declined the best educational opportunities in the world on behalf of a daughter who never been consulted. My parents' logic, reconstructed through years of observation, was brutally simple. They had 2 children, me and my younger brother, Kevin. In their worldview, shaped by cultural traditions and personal biases, sons carried family legacies. Daughters married out. Investing in a daughter's education was wasteful. The money spent on her would benefit her husband's family, not her own. Better to save resources for Kevin, whose success would reflect directly on the Chen family name. They'd never said this explicitly. But their actions had spoken clearly. Kevin had attended private schools while I went public. Kevin had tutors while I was told to figure things out myself. Kevin's college applications were professionally managed while mine were completed alone at the kitchen table. When the acceptances arrived, mine from prestigious universities, Kevin's from state schools, they'd faced a choice. They'd chosen to hide my success and fabricate my failure. My path after that fabricated rejection had been difficult but not impossible. Community college led to a state university transfer. State university led to a business degree completed while working full-time. The business degree led to entry-level positions, then promotions, then the entrepreneurial leap that had defined my 30s. I founded Meridian Analytics at 31, a data consulting firm that had grown to 40 employees and $4 million in annual revenue. I'd built something real, something valuable, something that bore my name and reflected my capabilities. But I'd built it carrying invisible weight. The weight of believing I'd failed at 18. The weight of wondering if I was truly smart enough. The weight of comparing myself to Ivy League graduates and always feeling lesser. That weight had been artificial. My parents had created it to justify their betrayal. The confrontation happened at my parents' house, 3 months after the reunion. I'd waited until I had complete documentation. The original acceptance letters. The decline letters bearing my father's forged signature. The financial aid packages I'd never seen. The evidence was comprehensive and undeniable. Kevin was there too, not by accident. I wanted him to witness what our parents had done, to understand the full scope of their favoritism. I have something to show you, I said, spreading the documents across their dining room table. My mother looked confused. My father went pale. These are my acceptance letters from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. Dated March 2008. I was 18 years old. I pointed to the decline letters. And these are the letters you sent, with my forged signature, declining all 3. Vivian, that was a long time ago, my mother started. You told me I was rejected. You told me I wasn't smart enough. You let me spend 15 years believing I'd failed, when actually I'd succeeded beyond anything I'd imagined. We made a decision. You made a decision about my future without consulting me. You stole opportunities that were mine. You forged my name on legal documents. My voice remained steady. And you did it because you believed girls don't need prestigious educations. My father's defense was infuriating. We couldn't afford to send you both. Kevin needed the resources more. Harvard offered me full financial aid. I wouldn't have cost you anything. The family needed to sacrifice the daughter so the son could thrive. That's what you believed. That's what you acted on. I turned to Kevin. Did you know about this? Kevin's face was unreadable. I suspected. Mom and Dad pushed so hard for me to succeed, and they never seemed to care about your applications. I thought maybe you just didn't try as hard. I tried harder than anyone. I was valedictorian. I had perfect test scores. I was accepted to 3 Ivy League schools. I shook my head. You suspected and you said nothing for 15 years. I didn't know for certain. You didn't want to know. It was easier to believe I wasn't good enough than to confront what our parents had done. The request for money had come 6 months before the reunion. Kevin wanted to pursue an MBA at a prestigious business school. Now they wanted me to fund his next chapter. You've done so well, Vivian, my mother had said during that initial call. Your company is successful. Kevin needs help reaching his potential. His potential. The same word they'd used to justify stealing my opportunities. I'll think about it, I'd said. I'd thought about it for 6 months. Then I discovered the truth. The response I'd prepared was devastating and deliberate. I'd had copies made of every document, the acceptances, the forged declines, the financial aid packages. I'd compiled them into a presentation folder with a cover letter. You asked me to fund Kevin's MBA, I said, placing the folder on the table. This is my response. My father opened the folder. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something approaching shame. These are the opportunities you stole from me. 3 Ivy League acceptances, declined without my knowledge or consent, so you could save resources for Kevin. I kept my voice level. I built a $4 million company without Harvard. Without Yale. Without Princeton. Without your support. Without even believing I was capable of attending those schools. Vivian. I'm not funding Kevin's MBA. I'm not funding anything for this family ever again. I stood. You chose him over me at every opportunity. You lied to me to justify that choice. You let me spend 15 years believing I was inadequate so you could feel righteous about your favoritism. We did what we thought was best. You did what was best for Kevin. Not for me. Not for the family. For your son, at the expense of your daughter. I walked toward the door. I hope it was worth it. Because you've lost me. The aftermath was complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. Kevin reached out separately, attempting something resembling an apology. I didn't know for certain, but I should have asked. I should have questioned why everything came so easy for me and so hard for you. Yes. You should have. Can we still have a relationship? I don't know. I need time to understand who you are when you're not benefiting from my exploitation. He didn't like that answer, but he accepted it. We'd been close as children, before the family dynamics had separated us into winner and loser. Maybe something could be rebuilt. Maybe not. My parents made no such attempts at reconciliation. They maintained they'd made reasonable decisions based on cultural values and financial realities. They refused to acknowledge that forging my signature on legal documents was wrong. They refused to accept that their favoritism had caused lasting harm. The relationship ended there. The story became public in unexpected ways. A friend who worked in journalism asked if she could write about my experience. I agreed, on the condition that she focus on the broader issue rather than personal vendettas. Parents sabotaging daughters' opportunities isn't rare, I told her. It's just rarely documented. Girls are told they're not smart enough, not capable enough, not worthy of investment, and they believe it because they trust their families. The article resonated. Other women shared similar experiences, not always as dramatic as mine, but following the same pattern. Resources diverted to brothers. Ambitions dismissed. Potential hidden or denied. My story became part of a larger conversation about gender bias in family investment, about the ways daughters are systematically undervalued, about the long-term damage of believing you're less than you are. Harvard reached out after the article was published. The Alumni Association wanted to know if I'd be interested in speaking at their annual Women's Leadership Conference. The irony was not lost on them, a woman rejected by her family for Harvard acceptance, now invited to address Harvard graduates. "We can't give you the education you were denied," the coordinator said. "But we can give you the platform." I accepted. The speech I gave was different from my usual business presentations. It was personal in a way I rarely allowed myself to be. I was accepted to this institution 15 years ago. I never knew. My parents declined on my behalf without telling me, because they believed daughters don't need prestigious educations. I paused. I built a $4 million company without the Harvard credential. I employed dozens of people. I created value that exists regardless of where I went to school. The audience was silent, attentive. But I also spent 15 years believing I wasn't smart enough. Believing I'd failed at something I'd actually succeeded at. Believing the lie my parents told because I trusted them more than I trusted myself. I looked out at the sea of faces, accomplished women who'd received the opportunities I'd been denied. The lesson isn't that Harvard doesn't matter. It's that your potential exists regardless of whether your family recognizes it. The doors they close aren't the only doors available. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. My company continued to grow. Meridian Analytics expanded to 3 offices, 80 employees, and $12 million in annual revenue. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in business publications, recognized as an entrepreneur who'd built something significant. None of the recognition mentioned Harvard. Why would it? I'd never attended. But every achievement carried new weight now. Not the artificial weight of believing I'd failed, but the earned weight of knowing I'd succeeded despite deliberate sabotage. The imposter syndrome that had haunted me for 15 years began to fade. I wasn't an imposter. I was someone who'd been systematically undermined by the people who should have supported her most. The success I'd built wasn't in spite of my inadequacy. It was in spite of my parents' betrayal. Kevin eventually got his MBA. He funded it himself, through loans and part-time work and the humbling experience of not having family resources to fall back on. The process took longer than he'd planned. It was harder than he'd expected. "I understand now, a little," he told me years later, when we'd rebuilt enough trust to have honest conversations. "What it was like for you. Having to earn everything while I was handed things. It's not the same. You still had their belief in you. Their investment in your potential. I had their active sabotage." "I know. I'm not claiming equivalence." He paused. "But I understand better why you built what you built. When no one believes in you, you either collapse or you prove them wrong." I proved them wrong. "You did. Spectacularly. My parents never apologized. They died within 2 years of each other, my father from heart disease, my mother from grief and cancer. I attended both funerals, sat in the back, spoke the minimum required words. Some stories don't have reconciliation. Some wounds don't heal because the people who inflicted them refuse to acknowledge the damage. But I'd stopped needing their acknowledgement. The acceptance letters existed. The forged declines existed. The documentation proved what they'd done. Their opinion of my potential no longer mattered. My achievements had rendered their assessment irrelevant. The acceptance letter from Harvard hangs in my office now. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. A reminder of what was stolen and what was rebuilt. A reminder that the people who should support you sometimes betray you instead. A reminder that potential doesn't disappear when it's denied, it finds other paths. Dear Ms. Chen, we are pleased to inform you of your acceptance. I was worthy at 18. I was worthy at 33 when I discovered the truth. I remain worthy now. The letter doesn't define my capabilities. My company defines them. My achievements define them. The life I built without their support defines them. But the letter reminds me that I always had the capacity to belong in those spaces. The only barrier was a forged signature on a stolen opportunity. They hid my Harvard acceptance and told me I wasn't smart enough. They forged my signature on decline letters to 3 Ivy League schools. They invested everything in my brother while letting me believe I'd failed. For 15 years, I carried the weight of manufactured inadequacy, building a company while doubting my own abilities. Then I found out the truth, I hadn't failed. I'd been sabotaged by the people who should have championed me. They asked me to fund my brother's MBA. I sent them a copy of the acceptance letter they'd hidden. I built $4 million of proof that their assessment was wrong. Girls don't need Ivy League? This girl didn't get to find out. She built her empire anyway.